Growing Up Aspen, a Joiner's Table podcast with a student we went to school with, Stacey Kalkowski, who had a trip through Hollywood and is now a professor at one of UAE's oldest college universities. Well, you talk about the faculty at your school. Can you talk about the teachers that influenced you along the way? I mean, whether it was elementary school, high school, there were a few teachers that really stood out. Each person has their own, but I'm wondering if you have, can speak to some of the teachers that influenced you.
Yeah, Mrs.
Your
Smith.
teacher.
Right? Yeah, Mrs. Smith, obviously she was our art teacher, right? Mr. Clapper, Mr. Wilkes. Do you remember Mr. Wilkes?
Oh yeah, he was awesome.
Yeah, he was really hard on me. But then, I remember I wrote this poem in his poetry class, and he gave me, it was probably my first A in there because I was getting C's, and it inspired me to start writing. Actually, Mr. Popenchuk actually was very I did the debate team for a while with him, and I really enjoyed that. He was a very outgoing person and very encouraging. Of course, Kathy, she was my French teacher, and Mr. Burson. Who else? I think those were the main ones. I had I think that was the main ones for me.
You mentioned Smithy first. No one's really talked about her, and she was so important in my sort of opening up my mind of saying, hey, if you want to, because everybody's always like, oh, you have all these great ideas. No, you can't do that. That's too much. That's too big of an idea. Blah blah blah. You can't do that. Smithy was always like, well, yeah, why don't you go ahead and try it? But try this and do this. And so she kind of gave you, or for me, she gave me the doors to be able to think out, but also taper it down and do something, make something work,
Yeah, it was just fun being in her classes. I mean, you could take your own idea and go with it, and she'd just kind of guide you along to help you, because art is just phenomenal. So we all love art here, right? But I really did love those classes. And then at the same time, that was when my parents were trying to get me to do marine biology. So they forced me to take community college there. What was that community college where they had the night classes there?
Rocky Mountain.
CMC.
Rocky Mountain.
Yes.
Yeah, Colorado Mountain College.
Colorado. That's what it was. So I took marine biology there. They made me take German there.
So you actually were a high school student that took college courses back then?
Yes.
Wow, that's cool.
And just now is the only time I just thought, I should have transferred those credits, huh?
Yeah.
But I know. But my parents are trying to get me out of the art zone, but what can you do?
Yeah.
I did for a while, I guess. I guess the film industry was kind of out of the art zone.
Well, I think the true power is in how creative you are, not what line item you fit in. And the more creative you are, the more potential you have to make something happen. And I feel like that's one of the things where they don't understand.
I don't know. I would be miserable in an office. Honestly, if my job, my brother loves working in an office. Okay. I hate it. I can't imagine anything more miserable than being a cubicle person. I would just, for me, that would just I would.
Did it for many years. It's good and bad. I kind of made it into management pretty quick and early on, but
you were at the newspapers, so that was a whole industry.
In newspapers, it's the corporate lifestyle's different. It's not for everybody.
It's my brother does medical billing, or I'm not even clear all the way on what he does, but he does medical coding and billing, things like this. That would make crazy, he loves it though.
Right. Right. Everybody's different. Everybody's got their.
Yeah.
But it is nice when you're a little different from your parents, and there is someone out there like Smithy that can help prod you along and.
Absolutely.
And I feel like that's awesome. the power of being a good teacher.
Yeah.
It's funny. I never took an art class.
You didn't?
Out there. I couldn't because I was in band and it conflicted.
Oh,
So
I
it
was in band with you, huh? 'Cause
yeah.
I took band for years.
Yeah, you were flute, wasn't it? Or what was it?
Clarinet.
Clarinet, that was what it was.
I wanted to play the drums, but I was told that I was a girl, so I was not allowed to play the drums.
Oh my gosh.
That's silly.
Mr. Klechko, right? Yeah.
Yeah,
Klechko. He told the girls they're not allowed to play certain instruments. So
that is weird.
We were enlightened to a point, you know.
Narrow-minded.
We were told we could play the flute, the French horn, or the clarinet. And if you remember, maybe Chris, all the girls were playing the flute, the French horn, or the clarinet.
I do remember that.
And my wife,
Jackie played something too. What did she play?
I think Chris Douglas played the drums, and I was so jealous because I really wanted to do the drums. Whatever. Clarinet. Well, it was good. I did it for like 5 years or something. It was good. You know, I'm not very musical, but I enjoyed it.
Do you feel like that influenced some of your creativity in a way?
You know, it's interesting that you're asking me these questions on did it influence you directly? I don't think a lot of things like influence you directly. I think they're indirect, that you absorb them and they become part of you. And so I'm sure like it did, but I don't know exactly how it influenced me. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, well,
I mean, everything we do, I think, influences us, but it's very interesting because you're making me like think about like what influenced you, and I'm like, I
think the word might not be influence, might be inspire. In other words, when you're thinking and creative and you're doing stuff and you're pulling from things that are in your life and in your environment, you tend to, you know, pull from. So like, for instance, you know, U2 had their sound and their thing. Well, later on came Muse. Not too much later on, but Muse sort of had their own sound, but they kind of pulled a little bit from what U2 delivered. It was a different rock, and it was a different kind of push with rock and roll, you know? And I feel like a lot of times I call it influenced, but I think we're inspired by the things around us that we like, you know? And so I was just wondering if there's something from music that you feel that you got.
Yeah, probably. I appreciate that I learned how to read music. And I'll tell you, the most useful class I took in high school was typing.
Yeah.
To this day, I use it on my computer, the QWERTY thing that we learned. And I think I got a C- in that class or something, but you know, because you had to type a certain amount of words per minute. Do you guys remember everyone was required to take typing?
Yeah, Conroe.
I remember that.
I know, I took Conroe, yeah.
And
Conroe, was my teacher, and then there was the Bauman. Bauman taught it too.
Bauman did? Oh, really?
Who I took it from. But you had to type a certain amount of words per minute, which I could never do. But to this day, I can still type without looking because of that class. And I think that class was so useful. I see kids today doing this, you know?
Yeah.
And I go, oh my God, you know? How painful, you know?
No, it's true. Those old IBM computer, those old typewriters, yeah.
Yeah, they were typewriters. They were actual typewriters.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, the ribbon and the correction stuff.
Yeah, you got marked down if you had corrections.
Yeah.
God. But that was a good class. I think it was one of the most useful classes I ever took. How about you guys? Which was one of the most useful high school classes you ever took that you used? You said math, right?
Me?
Yeah.
Actually, I pretty much graduated ignorant of math, but I had to relearn it. And actually, you mentioned CMC. I went back and had to learn algebra at CMC because Colorado State University at the time didn't teach it. They tested for it, but they didn't teach it. So you had to pass it or you couldn't be a student there. And I got to the point where I couldn't pass it, so I had to take a year off and go learn algebra because I never learned it at Aspen High.
I don't think they taught algebra. Did they?
Yeah, Miss Sanchez.
They did, but they just moved on really fast. And
I don't remember taking you there. I took it in college, but I remember struggling through that, but I don't remember it.
And it was, but no, I'd say the most The most useful class would have been, you even said it earlier, was Mr. Wilkes' class. I mean, that was seminal, I think, for me, for Lo, and definitely Dean. We've all talked about that class. Creative writing. That was really pretty cool.
I think I'd have to say 2. And I think that Miss Smith was the one who made me realize that creativity is a tool, and that you have to, you can channel it and make it do things. And I felt like that was really cool. But I think the person who taught me how to really think, I mean, obviously it was my friendship with Dave Burson, who was in speech and debate, and that I got influenced from those folks, but by not being in speech and debate. But with George Burson, because George Burson taught me about politics in a way of how it affected you. In other words, when he talked about Vietnam, it wasn't about a book. It was about his chest that he brought in, and all the stuff that he explained in the newspaper clippings, and all the things that he had collected, as opposed to what the book decided to talk about.
Yeah.
And I felt like
Burson
that to me was like a crucial moment of thinking of things in a different way.
Yeah, he was pretty seminal too. And now I always go back to the story with Heidi Roop. I don't know if you remember her, if you ever had her.
I remember her
Yes,
name.
I did.
What did she teach?
She taught like social studies or something, or
He had glasses, kind of long hair.
And like a bob cut. Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah. And she was a tough teacher. But I'll never forget it. It was one of those days where Dean and I studied together for this thing, and we both went in, and she goes, he goes, "How did I do, Mrs. Roop?" And she said, "You got an A-, Dean. It was really good." And I was like, "Oh, I knew I killed it on this one." And I walked up and I was like, "And how about me, Mrs. Roop? How did I do?" And she goes, "You failed." But it was just so funny. I mean, I couldn't help but like her, even though she completely gutted me, you know.
She had a big smile.
Yeah. That was it was very interesting, the different teachers that we had. I really like, I guess, I think Aspen High School, we couldn't have had a better place to learn. I will say that for sure. I think that was one of the best places. And at the time too, like teachers and students could be closer. Now you have to separate yourself a lot from your students, and you can't have that same dynamic that we did, especially with that age kids,
Well, in America, the Commons doesn't even exist anymore, where we used to all hang out and they can't do that anymore because of the school shootings. So there is no real hangout place for kids to sort of hang out like that.
Well, they do. I mean, they hang out in the library and stuff. It'd be interesting to ask my kids.
Yeah, but you're not having a conversation in the library like we did on the tables in the Commons area.
I don't know. They've got some kind of a homeroom situation where they all hang out, and I don't know for sure.
They don't have the beach though,
Right.
like how we on the side of
the smokers lounge.
Right?
You don't have that.
Oh God, yeah.
Well, now it's a huge
But I love that we had a free campus that we could move on and off the campus.
Yep.
We had, it gave you a certain amount of independence. I mean, there was ways that you could arrange, and you could arrange your own schedule like a university, which was so cool, because I know that I had one day that was like half off, and I would then after class go skiing, up at Highlands.
That's what I did my senior year. I had taken all the credits I needed. So I just had to fill the requirement of I have to have a class. And so I took 2 classes, and by like 10 o'clock I was out. So I would go I lived right up on Highlands, right behind, there's that church up by the high school there, and there's that road with homes up there. We lived there. So I would just walk home, grab my skis with my school book pack on, hike up to the top of the road, flap my skis on, go up to the lodge, do my homework, and then take a bunch of runs and go home. And that was my senior year.
So responsible. You did homework. Oh my gosh. I did not do homework. Well, I very rarely did homework.
I'd sit by the fireplace. Because no one would be up there during the week. And I had it all to myself. It was awesome.
Well, and for ill or for good, they don't really do homework for my kids. I mean, they have it, But I don't think they're like massively graded down if they don't turn it in. And then they have the opportunity to turn it in late for a smaller grade and stuff. And I'm like, man, if I had that, I would have been a much better student.
Yeah,
you know, there's
we get
no
lax, you know. I actually do that with my classes, you know. Imagine I used to not do homework in high school, and now I'm a professor, but very weird. But for my students, I give them the opportunity to turn it in or redo it. If they turn it in on time and they can improve it, they can, you know, they get their grade, they can turn it in as many times as they want to fix it. I think you know, only the A students really do it, or B students, but the rest of them are too lazy or don't care enough to do it, you know, but they have the opportunity.
Well,
I had a professor in in college that did that, and I thought, what a great idea.
It's also self-driven. I feel like the Teresa Price and the Price sisters were they were driven from the very beginning, you know. They didn't need any coaching. They didn't need they just pushed themselves real hard.
Jill Meskin, you know, Jill got you know, I think straight A's. I don't, and being a close friend, and I did not get straight A's. I don't know what I had. I had probably like a 1.8 or something when I graduated. I'm not sure. But it wasn't great. It wasn't great. I do remember that. Well, what was the guy who taught shot? No, had the coach. We had one finger, like a missing finger.
Oh, Bob Simons. Bob Simons, the English teacher.
Yeah.
Oh,
I have him. Yeah, he's tough.
We had many discussions because I just felt like he was not grading fair. He would only pick certain people for certain ways, and my parents actually believed me, so they came in and sat down with him. But you know, that guy failed twice.
I don't know if you remember this or not, but when we graduated, Wendy and Teresa Price, the Price.
I remember that. They
wrote. You remember when they
shared a paper? Didn't they share their paper? They got an A.
Yeah, it was Will Bennis. Will Bennis. Yeah.
Yeah, they outed him, and
such a great story.
Kirsten Peelstick's paper that they switched the cover of each of them and turned them in, and Wendy or Teresa got an A like they always did, and Kirsten got like a D or whatever, like she always did, and they were like, well, we switched the name.
No, that was Will. It wasn't Kirsten. It was Will Bennis that switched with her, and Will Bennis got a D, and it was amazing, really bad because
because that was your class. It was 1 year before me, right?
Yeah,
so we all knew that. And then I was like, I said, Mom, see, he fails people that are not like in football or in whatever, you know. It's just ridiculous.
Well, you know what sucked for me was I had him in 8th grade. And I was like, yeah, okay, finally we're going to finish 8th grade. I'm getting into high school. I won't have Bob Simons anymore. That was the year he moved to the high school. My freshman year, I had Bob Simons.
Oh, my God. That's crazy.
Thanks for listening. The authors of Growing Up Aspen would like to thank you and would like to also thank the Aspen Times and the Aspen Daily News for giving us materials for our book, Growing Up Aspen, Adventures of the Unsupervised, which you can get at twistandturnpress.com and any local bookstore. Thanks.